talk about a woman's place. Is it in the House, or is it in the Senate? Is it in the kitchen, or the C-suite? Well, in America, thankfully, in America that we live in today, a woman can really, her place is really wherever she chooses for it to be. And we have suffragettes and women's liberation movement to thank for a lot of that and the rights that we have today. But I really believe that our personal values and beliefs come from our family of origin and our early influencers. So a woman's place has really evolved over time. Let's go back to the 1940s, where my maternal grandmother, she was among 75% of women who were homemakers. So only 25% of women were in the workforce. And my papa was the sole financial provider for his family. You know, no pressure. They got married when they were 18, like you did back then, and had my mom shortly after. And my grandmom didn't work a day in her life for a company. But she worked her fingers to the bone every day for her family, both her immediate family and her extended family, because you see, there were in the 1950s and 60s, a lot of her male relatives would come up from Oklahoma, and they would stay with my grandparents in, the big city in Wichita and work for the aircraft aviation plants, because that's where the money was. And so she had this rotating roster of male relatives that she would have to hand wash and dry their laundry, and she would make their lunches and dinners and clean up, all in addition to her usual responsibilities of taking care of her husband and 2 kids. So just imagine your favorite male relative, putting his dirty shoes on your clean living room carpet. I'm sure some of us can relate. She had that times, let's multiply it by 10 men in 20 years. So it's every girl's dream, right? Well, the next generation, my mom's generation, she was lucky that she got to go down a different path. College, it was never really a question whether or not she could go. After all, that's why her parents had worked so hard. Her dad in the machinist union, and her mom reheating dinner in these tiny little 10 cups, all the leftovers on the table all at once because they were trying to save money. So my mom, growing up like that, it really shaped how she viewed her responsibility to have kids and to be a wife. And of course, as you do, she rebelled a little bit from that. And she said, I don't want to have kids. I'm not going to have kids. And, really, why would she want to have kids? Her mom had not made motherhood look fun. She had not made it look empowering. She loved her, but it wasn't the type of life that she wanted to lead. Thankfully, my mom did decide to have kids, and I owe a lot of the credit for that to my dad, because he really taught her how to live an adventurous life. He had grown up in a family where his mother, even though she had kids, ended up being a pilot, and recreationally. And she held quite a few jobs and was really a big part of the community. And so she had modeled that for him, and he was able to then share that with my mother. And, he encouraged her in her career, and he supported her and helped out with me and my brother. And that allowed me really to grow up believing that women could have careers, they could own businesses, they could travel, and they could still be amazing moms. And okay, so she missed a few of my cross-country meets, but you know what? She owned a business and she was conquering the world, and I really have a lot of respect and gratitude, honestly, to her for modeling that for me. Okay, so let's talk about my generation. Yes, I'm a millennial, and we all know that us millennials, we're struggling simultaneously with entitlement and self-loathing. A lot of us had working moms who we saw trying to balance it all, and we saw as a result their marriages, their friendships, and their self-care suffer oftentimes. Maybe we weren't as close with our moms as we wanted to be because they weren't there as much as we wanted them to be. And so a lot of us said, when I have kids, I'm going to be more present. I'm going to model a healthy work-life balance. And So we said, is there a job I can get where I can work from home? Is there a business I can start where I can do it from home? But, the network marketing of the 90s and early 2000s didn't really appeal to a lot of the women in my generation. And so we were negotiating for remote work opportunities. We were looking for freelance work. We were thinking about flexible work schedules and pushing our employers to offer those benefits and amenities. And, it's a kind of work that's still really hard to explain to my now 90-year-old grandma. I work from a computer. I can work anywhere in the world. She's like, oh, can you take off to come visit us? Yeah, sure, I'll just bring my computer. Do you have good internet? Okay, I'm gonna have to go to McDonald's while I'm there. They live in southeastern Oklahoma, and the internet there's not the best. So, we've really shifted in what it means to work, and that's opened up possibilities, but it's also been kind of isolating as a result. Women today no longer have that common shared experience that they did in the past. So, there was a time period when most women were housewives. They had, they were able to relate to each other over child rearing, over errands and housekeeping. And then there was a time where most women were nurses and secretaries and teachers. It was a pretty good chance that if you ran into somebody and they were a working woman, that you could pretty much guess their career. And they related over the shared industry, their similar struggles, common mistreatment. And now, we're not all stay-at-home moms, and we're not all in the same industries. We no longer are building those kinds of connections that women have always thrived on. We're so spread out in varied experiences, and we no longer frequent the environments that formerly allowed us to build relationships organically. The hair salon, going every week, sitting under the hair dryer, getting your hair done, getting it set, going to the public pool with your kids in the summer, going, having teacher's lounge conversations. I've been there. I was a teacher for 5 years. But, back then when that was a predominantly female career, that was a place that a lot of women made connections. So we still have some mommy groups, and we still have some women that go to work with their friends at lunch. But many of us are feeling isolated, and even when we're surrounded by people. So their lives, even the people that we're surrounded by, the women that we're surrounded by, they just feel so different than us. And we're no longer having to navigate where are we allowed to be, but what we're having to grapple with is how do we still feel connected when we're moving in and out of categories so often. So let's talk about these categories. We've manufactured them. And they're labels that hold us back. So, the Pinterest moms. They're perfect, right? They put together the ideal first birthday party for their kid, and every little detail's in place, and the rest of us feel like we can't really shape up. So what if that woman goes back to work? Will she lose her friends? So what about the people that don't have kids, choose not to have kids? Maybe they don't, they just don't want kids, or maybe they feel like, I don't want to neglect kids, so I'm just going to focus on my career and not have them. What if they do decide to have kids? Are they going to lose all their dink friends, the double income, no kids? What about women who go on maternity leave? They've got to make that decision. Am I going to leave my baby with a stranger? Am I going to stay at home and feel isolated and depressed? These are the labels that we put on women, depending on which decision they make. Is she going to lose her friends if she stays at home? Is she going to lose her mommy friends if she goes to work? These labels really keep us from interconnecting with people, and they keep our friendships defined to these categories that we only fit into for seasons. They limit our potential. Our personalities are too big for one-size-fits-all system of classification, and female friendships are so much bigger than having babies born in the same month, or the fact that we both use an app. We miss the organic childhood connections where the location we were in put us in contact with kids we might have had nothing in common with otherwise, yet we formed, tangible long-term friendships, some of which stand the test of time. And, now we're transitioning and we're losing friends every time we switch into a different category. And as a city, we're collectively losing our friends. You've probably heard of the Chung Report if you're in Wichita, and recently the findings were that over the past few years, Wichita has exported 4,000 college-educated women under the age of 45. Where did they go? Well, I think that they were looking for a world where women felt empowered, where women were empowered in the cities that were already striving to meet the needs of the new woman in this day and age. What's making this Wichita world so unappealing to these women? Well, we know that in Wichita, women have lower starting wages on average. We earn 72% of what men make. In the country, women earn 80%. So we're behind the country, and if you look at women who are minorities, it's even worse, okay? It's worse in the country, and it's worse in Wichita. We have a lack of mentorship opportunities. We have a culture that insists still on traditional roles for women and men, particularly when it comes to parenting. We have a culture that has male-dominated profitable industries. So we know the industries that run Wichita, and you can't tell me they're not male-dominated right now. And we have inflexible work schedules. Wichita hasn't caught up. Wichita businesses have not caught up to that movement of having remote workers. So what if there was a place where women could go to get help on negotiating a higher salary? What if there was a place that women could go to find a mentor? What if we built a micro community that insisted on empowering partners to take equal part in raising kids and doing the housework? What if we could retrain our brains as women to not feel guilty about dropping the ball? What if there was a place we could network with women in men-dominated industries? So engineering, construction, manufacturing, and my favorite, entrepreneurship. What if you could convince your boss to work one day a week in a space that inspired you outside of the office? So we all have these things that, women are leaving Wichita for these reasons, but it really all boils down to one thing that we're missing. I believe it's just one thing that all those things come out of. Well, connection. So, how do you foster connection? You build a community. And in the olden days, they called it a tribe. And in many parts of the world, they still call it a tribe. We're going to call it a hive. But connection, it can't be forced. You can't just make a hive and then make people connect. It must be handcrafted from compassion. And when do we most need compassion? When we're transitioning. So there's a handbook for what to do when somebody gets married, right? You do the bridal shower. You make a bachelorette party and a bachelor party. You go to the wedding. You give them a gift. You do the dance. You do the cake. You drink and laugh and have fun. And then nothing. When somebody has a baby, we know exactly what to do, right? You throw them a baby shower. Give them gifts. Go to the hospital when the baby's born. Visit them nonstop for 2 weeks just so you can hold the baby. And then nothing. We know what to do when somebody retires. We throw them a big party. We get them a gift. And then nothing. When somebody gets divorced, we say, I know a great lawyer. We help them move out. And then nothing. When somebody dies, we call, we give condolences, we send flowers, all of that, and then nothing. So think about the last 3 weddings you went to. Have you spoken to the happy couple since their happy day? I bet that new bride cries herself to sleep the first time they have a fight that they don't resolve before bedtime. And guess what? She doesn't have anybody to call because she's supposed to be happy. And I bet that new mom yawns because she's so sleep deprived and isolated, but there's nobody to call because she's supposed to be happy. And that retiree, they're sitting lonely, watching the news and doing the crossword. And they have nobody to call because they're supposed to be happy. And then sometimes there's places and times when you're supposed to be sad. the divorcee. She feels free from her cage, but she can't call anybody because she's supposed to be sad. And the widow, she smiles for the very first time since her husband passed away, but she has nobody she can call, and she feels terrible about herself because she's supposed to be sad. We need a society that we don't need society to tell us how to feel. We need friends who help us feel. We need other women and supportive men we can turn to beyond the initial stages of a transition. We need them to say, "You're not alone. I've totally been there. I'm here with you. I'll listen." And sometimes when it gets really overwhelming, we need them to say, "Okay, here's what we're going to do." So where do women belong? I'm going to ask you again. I believe that we belong together. And I believe that we belong immersed in an environment filled with connection-hungry change makers motivated to grow themselves and others personally and professionally. So, like a lot of entrepreneurs, I had a problem, and there wasn't a solution in my city. And so I created it for myself, and a lot of other people happen to be drawn to the idea, and so together we grew our community and co-working space we call the Hive. And what happens at the Hive? Together, our members become more healthy. We've got a physical location with on-site yoga, massage therapy, a chiropractor, and fresh local food twice a week at Lunch and Learns. Which brings me to Inspired. We regularly host 30-minute value-based sessions where local business owners give presentations that teach our members about a topic of interest to professionals and entrepreneurs: business growth, color psychology, assertive communication, plant-based nutrition, simplifying your style. One of the most important beliefs we hold is that every member should feel valued. You're an expert in a field if you're one step ahead of somebody behind you. And that everyone is a mentor. We have women from ages 19 to over 70 in our community at the Hive, and you should see the magic that happens when you connect incredible women of all ages in a space together, working together to lift one another up. Speaking of which, our last value is that each member feels empowered, because not only do we love you and think that you're awesome, we believe you know that you can accomplish whatever goal you set your mind to. The path may not look like you first anticipated, but there are many ways to reach a destination, and we're along for the ride, not to drive for you, but to make sure you keep your foot on that pedal and your eye on that road, because girl, you've got this. Thank you.